And we're live. It's we're about 15 minutes. We're running about 15 minutes behind this morning. Um, and yeah, so shoot, buddy.
That's okay. Last night on Polytech, Alex said we go live at 7:30 a.m. and I didn't correct him because lately kind of we kind of been all over the map.
Well, uh, in fairness, this is uh this is the script for the film that we're shooting this summer, and I mean I've been up doing the lines and I mean trying to make sure we got all the camera coverage and everything going on. It's you know, working on a shot list, the whole shot list. So it's yeah, it was a late night last night, but it's Friday morning, which means it's time to talk about some firearms. Um,
Yeah, buddy. Favorite segment of the week
yeah,
upcoming.
buddy. So real quick, I we're not going to discuss the George Floyd thing anymore this morning. I'm going to mention it briefly because there's a couple of things that I just want to touch real quick, but I don't want to go deep into the conversation on it.
You mean like the riots?
The riots going on, guys. The white supremacists, the racists, the Nazis, whatever, those people. Part of their part of their argument, part of their position is going to be in a case like this is always going to be black men commit crimes at a dramatically higher rate than white men, and that is statistically verifiably true. It does not in any way justify what happened to George Floyd, but that it is statistically true that black men commit crimes at a higher rate. And that is not, I am very carefully saying commit, not are convicted for. And there's a reason for that. Um, the, the evidence just isn't there to support the counter narrative. But when your response to part of the justification for the death of George Floyd is the the high rate at which black men commit crimes in this country, and your response is a bunch of black men go out and start burning down buildings, even in L.A., right? I mean Minneapolis too, but these riots are happening all over the country in several different cities. Everybody was on your side, right? I did not and will not come out 100% on the George Floyd did nothing wrong. There's a lot of that going on, but even even my defense of the situation, the defense that I put forward is not these cops did nothing wrong. It's this is not murder necessarily. The evidence doesn't support that. These cops, this is probably a case of cops being overzealous and over policing, and I'll even go so far as over militarization of the police, perhaps. But he wasn't killed over a bad check. He was killed in a bad arrest as a result of resisting. Resisting is the additional crime, the compounding offense that caused it to become a violent confrontation rather than a mere apprehension into custody. When you respond to that by going and looting and setting things on fire, I find it very difficult to believe that you're looting and setting things on fire as a form of protest. You're not. You're an opportunist, and it's not even that you think that the thing that happened gives you a good excuse to go and loot and riot. It's that you think the fact that the looting and rioting is going to occur is good cover to help you get away with a crime that you wanted to commit to begin with. So knock it off.
Yeah, and to just tag that real quick, let's be clear. The actual racists, the less than 1% of our country that is sympathetic toward the KKK and the like, um, They want for you to riot. They're going to point to it and say, see, we told you that they can't control themselves. One tragedy happens, and this is how they respond. And don't come to me with your Boston Tea Party Harbor bullshit either. The issue was specifically about the tea. They attacked the merchant ship that belonged to a foreign entity. They didn't burn down Boston. And there is a difference there, a big difference there. So please stop, because I could tell you what comes next if these riots continue. And that's Roof Koreans 2.0. And that's not the one you want. It's not. Don't back a small business owner into a corner where he feels like he's only got one choice so that he doesn't lose his entire livelihood. Don't do it.
There is one other group that is very interested and wants you rioting like this, and that is the Democrat National Committee.
Duh, I can't believe I forgot to mention them.
Cases like this are reported in the way that they are reported because the Democrat Party wants you to riot. The Democrat Party wants you to riot because the Democrat Party positions itself as the party of the poor. If you burn down your own cities,
you stay poor.
You stay poor, and you keep voting Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
That's the game.
And Minneapolis is, like most big cities, is largely controlled by Democrats and has been for decades. It's just a fact.
And because of these riots, in part, it will remain controlled by Democrats and therefore badly governed. Therefore governed like it was, it will have policy decisions made like the ones that led to the water problems in Flint, the ones that led to the lockdown problems in Michigan, the ones that led to the street shitters in San Francisco.
Or the subways in New York during a pandemic.
Or the pandemic subways in New York, yes. If you continue to riot every time one criminal gets himself in trouble by doing criminal stuff, you're gonna stay poor. If you live in a poor community and the response to bad police activity is that you just start setting shit on fire, you're never going to get better. You're never going to improve your lives, and you're going to continue to artificially perpetuate every stereotype that the Democrat Party bases its election campaigns upon. And you're just going to be stuck there. And that is 8 minutes on a topic that we weren't going to discuss. Let's talk about somebody getting shot.
Yay!
Suspected burglar fatally shot by homeowner in Everett. So we're in Washington State here. Shot dead by homeowner during an apparent break-in. Homeowner called 911, 5 o'clock in the morning. According to Aaron Snell with Everett Police. Officers arrived to find a... Oh, dear. Good morning, anyhow, Mario. Officers... I'll be back with you in a minute. Shithead. Officers arrived to find a critically wounded man in his 30s. Officers and medics attempted to revive the man, but he was later pronounced DRT, dead right there. Unlike George Floyd, who died at the hospital later. Investigators believe the burglars broke into the home and went into a room containing guns. The homeowner, a man in his 70s, awoke to sounds in his home, confronted the intruder, and shot him. That's probably what I'd do, said Miller, who lives nearby. Because I'm a firearms owner. If it happens, I'm ready to do the same thing. If you have a gun normally and someone breaks into your house, you're probably going to use the gun. Because if you don't, they're going to get you, said Victoria Morris, who works nearby. I feel sorry for the owner to have to live with that, though, because you don't want to ever be the one to have pulled the trigger. Yeah.
Not everybody's you, Chris. We're just keep on going.
Okay,
I know.
We'll have a conversation about that another time. Under the law, if someone breaks into your home, you're allowed to use force that is reasonably necessary, but you still have to show there was an imminent threat against you. Okay, now that's because Washington doesn't have a castle doctrine or stand your ground laws. Um, I I'm not intimately familiar with the law on this in Washington State, but a lot of the lefty states it'll have something like in order for you to not be charged with a crime after defending yourself in the home, you have to show that you made every reasonable attempt to retreat. That you tried as hard as you could not to kill the criminal. I hate those laws. That's ridiculous. When you have entered my home voluntarily and against my will, you have forfeited your life. Your life now has less value than my life, and dramatically less value than the lives of my wife and children, and frankly,
Even my
yes,
dog.
less value than my property.
Yeah, and not
If
only
you've
that,
broken into my home, your life is less valuable to me than the Snickers bar in the refrigerator.
not only that, but okay, duty to retreat. Okay, let's just spool that out real quick. Um, how much more retreating can I do than going to my own house?
And closing and locking the door.
I mean, that's the definition. Like in that case, you're literally pre-retreated. Like you can't retreat any further. So duty to retreat, yeah, okay. So basically, if you can run away from a bully, you must run away from the bully. And which means bullies get to keep on being bullies. And nope, sorry. You lose me on that one, sugar. But luckily, this story appears to have a happy ending, which seems to involve a gaping chest wound. Whoops.
So yeah, looks like he broke into the wrong house. Okay, so
Is there a right house to break into?
apparently apparently yes, because there are some articles now where landlords in the wealthier neighborhoods around New York City are claiming that they're what Hamptons and places like that. There are landlords claiming that the rich people are squatting in the rental summer homes and refusing to pay because of the
COVID.
moratorium on rents and mortgages under COVID.
Ah,
I saw one. The landlord was complaining that he had a rich woman squatting in one of his summer homes, and the landlord is not a multi millionaire, but he said that over the like 4 months of the summer season, if she squats there and doesn't pay her rent, he's going to lose 50 or 60 grand in rents. Like that's and I saw the picture of the house. Like no, I see it. I
I
get
mean,
it.
this is the kind of places where like you literally charge people $500 a night to stay there. You know, like
No, $2,500, $3,000 a night. And I mean, we're talking giant 10-bedroom mansions and yeah, a lot of money. Anyway, so I
you get to
want to
do a
learn a
makeup.
lot. I want to learn a lot more before we go too deep on this. But from what I understand, what I've managed to piece together so far, I just kind of skimmed the executive order. I haven't read it in detail and dissected it yet. But the news around it was basically that um, Donald Trump was going to shut down Twitter and the like over censorship questions. And instead, he came out with an executive order that basically says, no, I'm not threatening to shut anybody down. No, I want the FCC to begin enforcing the law that already exists, which makes a determination between whether you're a publisher or a platform. And ladies and gentlemen, in the wake of that, I'll show you in just a second, Twitter and Facebook and all of the social media platforms started losing in the stock markets, and Twitter went on an absolute panic mode, trying to prove that they're fact checking China too, and that's going to hurt them. But this one, especially since yesterday was such a somber topic, we're going to make it up with a
win. This guy so much sack. He protect, he attack. This guy no more homo erotic rocket ranches. Got it? Got it. Oh Jesus. So much wang.
it's Totar. Okay. There you go. Totar Win. It's Totar Win Friday this time.
Yeah, but making sounders takes time.
That some bitch stuttered a bit on me too.
I tell you what I love about this is how much this is classic Trump. And really anybody that's had any modicum of commission sales training understands this technique. Excuse me.
It's a bait and switch.
Yeah, it's like you ask for 10 times what you actually want so that you eventually negotiate back down to at least somewhere close to what your original goal was. And so threatening to shut down social media companies, and everybody panics, and then he comes out and goes, oh, no. Gosh, guys, I'd never shut you down. I mean, that is Trump all the way. It's one of the things I really appreciate about his presidency. He knows how to play the game. And then the other thing, and I'm like you, this just dropped yesterday. I've only been able to chew into it ever so slightly. But the thing of it is, Trump is going to force social media companies to pick a lane. And when I say that, there are publishers and there are platforms.
And the claim the thing you're going to hear people crying about is, but my First Amendment. Guys, I'm a First Amendment absolutist. Absolutely. And here's the thing. Even as a First Amendment absolutist, there are places where there's conflict in the law. You're going to hear people come out with a rebuttal to that, but my First Amendment. They're going to rebut, well, no, but because the First Amendment is restricted by the law sometimes because you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. Yes, you can yell fire in a crowded theater. You absolutely can. In fact, you have the absolute right to yell fire in a crowded theater. But just like when you publish a false defamatory statement in a newspaper, if there are consequences to your speech, then you can be prosecuted for the harm caused by the consequences of that speech, quite separately from the speech itself. When you yell fire in a crowded theater and then cause a panic which causes injuries, now you have done something other than speech. With these platforms, they are indemnified by Section 230 against being sued. They can't be held responsible for the things that appear on their platform because they're treated like a phone company or a cable company where anybody publishing something, they can't be held responsible because they can't know everything everybody publishes. Once they dropped they crossed the line a long time ago with the censorship stuff. But what happened here, what really gave Trump the teeth to do this, is when they added a sentence to his text message. They didn't just run a fact check and then publish an additional article. They edited the content of his speech. So just adding a sentence to the end of his text message, check here for the real facts. Now you're absolutely editorializing. And to make matters worse, The text that they dropped the text on was a statement of personal opinion, which is not subject to fact checking. In fact, the defamation lawsuit by OAN against Rachel Maddow will be cited as precedent in this because Rachel Maddow stated unequivocally that OAN is really, literally paid Russian propaganda. And she used those words, really, literally paid Russian propaganda. And the judge
Yeah,
the judge has accepted the request by that one's MSNBC, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So MSNBC's lawyers asked for a dismissal, and their justification, their argument for the dismissal, rather than arguing that her statement was factual and could be proved, they argued that no, in colloquial language, people use the word literally to mean the opposite of literally, which is figuratively, and so she was speaking hyperbolically. So when she said really literally, she didn't really literally mean really literally. She really literally meant not really, hyperbolically and figuratively.
Well, yeah, basically, she's a public figure who's got a show that has a large amount of opinion and commentary, and she's got a style, as it were, and her style includes making over-the-top statements. So,
No, her style includes habitually committing defamation, slander, and libel.
no, you know that. I know that. I'm just saying this is what the defense argued, and this is what the judge accepted as part of the argument. And okay, fine. Now that's going to really quickly come back around to bite him in the ass. And just to be really clear,
And that's because that's what lying does.
yeah, it usually does.
Lying bites you in the ass.
So let's just be real clear
Russia
here.
did.
Yeah. there are publishers and there are platforms, okay? Publishers can be held liable for what they publish. So they've got an element of risk. But because they have that element of risk, publishers are allowed to editorialize. In fact, they're encouraged to editorialize because they can be held liable for their speech. Platforms are immune from these sorts of liabilities. And because they enjoy the immunity, they are forbidden from editorializing because they don't need to editorialize. You can't be held responsible for what somebody uses your platform for. If I rent a room at a restaurant and use it to secretly hold a KKK rally, that's not the restaurant's fault. Well, what Facebook and Twitter have been able to do for some time now is get the benefits of both. Hey, we're a platform when it's convenient, we're a publisher when it's convenient, but then they don't face the negative consequences of either side. And as I understand it, Trump's executive order basically says, guys, pick a lane. You want to be publishers? Cool. You want to be platforms? Cool. But you ain't both. You could argue that this is basically an executive order to create something akin to the Glass-Steagall Act for social media companies.
But when you start making the but my First Amendment argument, my response is, but my First Amendment, because that is the actual issue. If they're going to act as a platform, then my First Amendment is protected, and my speech on the platform is protected. If my speech is not protected on the platform, then I get to sue you over any speech that is made on the platform.
Right, right. And here's the thing. I have no problem with engaging with a publisher in good faith because I know that I'm dealing with a publisher on the front end. I've got no problem with engaging with a platform in good faith, because I know that I'm dealing with a platform on the front end. But when you bait and switch me, and it turns out that you're a whole lot more likely to be one of those people that's baited and switched if you love guns, if you believe in the First Amendment, if you pray to a Christian God, and these sorts of things. Well, I got to tell you, I got a problem with that. And not just because I'm a more right-leaning person, but because obviously unfair rules are obviously unfair.
Well, not
And
only that, if you enjoy the protections of being a platform rather than a publisher, and I enter into an arrangement to use your platform for my speech, and then I get treated as a publisher, you have committed fraud.
yeah, you lied to me.
If you have edited, removed, censored, downvoted, um, shadow banned, if you have in any way stopped my speech, but you continue to argue that you have the protection under the law as a platform, then you are defrauding. You are defrauding the artist, the creator, the speaker, the writer, the whatever, anybody who wanted to put content on your platform.
Yeah,
And these companies, Google, Twitter, YouTube, that's what they've been doing. They've been engaged in in defrauding the creators and the users of their platforms and the American people. And put this very simply too, because there is such a hard political bias in the crime that's being committed when they defraud the American people, they have collectively been actively engaged in voter tampering, in election tampering, voter fraud, and voter suppression for as long as they have been acting as editorializers while simultaneously being protected from defamation.
yeah, and look, let me just back up and say that I'm not a fan of the executive order in and of itself, because generally speaking, I think an executive order at best is a measure of last resort. That being said, this is really one of those situations where, if you mess with the bull, you might end up getting the horns. Because for a long time, there's been this creep on social media platforms. And it seems to have started one way, but then trended and trended and trended and trended and trended. You just got to find the right case to get the ball rolling. And then, the slippery slope fallacy, when in fact it's not actually a slippery slope. And what's really funny to me is I think in the beginning, a lot of these social media sites were inherently liberal from the go. And then conservatives started using them and started dominating them, because a lot of conservatives put simply, like, we can take a joke, we can laugh at ourselves along with other people, we can make interesting arguments, we can rebut things. And so all these lefties got super butthurt. I mean, read to the stars, butthurt, because they had this thing, they all thought they were brilliant. We penetrated their echo chamber, made them feel stupid.
I've got sand in my vagina.
Yes, and it ends up turning into a world where Steven Crowder gets his show demonetized entirely. But
while they're live on the air.
I know, right? But Riley Dennis can make videos that say, if you won't sleep with a trans person, you're a bigot. And it's cool for Riley.
And that level of bigotry is tantamount to violence, and you should be prosecuted for it. But that's... Oh, Jesus. Okay, I'm going to give you some pushback on the executive order.
Drew's
Unless
asking.
unless a deep examination of the executive order, uh, unless a deeper examination of the executive order reveals some really complicated and bizarre sideways legal speak, this is exactly what an executive order is for. Because what this executive order does is not, it's not like one of Obama's executive orders where it creates a new law. Right?
No, I
It's
get it. It
the,
clarifies.
no, it doesn't clarify. It doesn't clarify the law. What it does is it is the chief law enforcement executive saying, "Hey, law enforcement agencies like the FCC, I am hereby ordering you to enforce the law as it exists." And that's what executive orders are for. See, Obama was tricky with executive orders. He would change the law by specifically targeting laws that prevented his voter base from committing crimes.
Let me be clear. I've got a pen and I've got a phone.
Yeah. So Obama would switch off laws. He would essentially decide that, well, I just don't want to enforce the borders. So here's an executive order that says stop arresting criminals at the border. Stop deporting criminal aliens no matter how many white babies they murder.
Oh yeah, like what he did with Doma.
Exactly. And with and then you get to DACA. What he did with the DACA thing. Oh my
The
God.
thing that he said he couldn't do that would be illegal for the president to do, he did anyway.
Yeah, and he literally created additional legal. He didn't just say don't enforce these laws anymore. He said, "Hey, stop enforcing the laws and go give these criminals a bunch of free money." So he essentially legislated from the Oval Office with his executive orders there. This is not that. This is exactly what an executive order is for. The executive order is for the chief officer of the executive branch to give orders to the members of the executive branch, the subordinates of the executive branch. These are your marching orders. These are your job descriptions. This is how you're expected to behave. A law exists. This executive order, I am compelling you as an employee, as a subordinate of the executive branch, to execute the enforcement of this law, which already exists legally, lawfully, and constitutionally. Now, the only thing that I would say against this order and the laws that it supports is, remember earlier when I said I'm a First Amendment absolutist? The executive order is absolutely the correct move inside of the current construct as it exists, as the current laws exist. The First Amendment and the Constitution do not leave interpretive space for there to lawfully exist under the U.S. government an FCC. That is not a constitutional lawful function of the government. The FCC should not exist. But so long as we've had some squirrely lawyers who are able to tell some squirrely lies, and this is part of why the FCC is problematic and needs to be addressed in the way that it's being addressed, is because it was built on false statements. It was built on lies, those lies being that it can be justified to exist under the Constitution. And just like I was saying a little bit ago, when you start telling lies, they're going to come back and bite you in the ass. Every time.
Now that's fair.
Eventually, they'll come back and get you.
Yeah, if you don't want Donald Trump to have this power, then you need to stop giving the government this power. I still say that ideally something like this should come from the legislative branch. Like, this is the sort of thing that's supposed to get debated in Congress, even if there's a whole bunch of bullshit writers that get attached to the bill in order to achieve some type of
No, no, no,
compromise.
no, 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 not at all. You're missing my point. This is the kind of thing that has already been debated in the legislature. The legislature has already created the law. The debate that you're talking about has already occurred.
Yeah,
The
it occurred
legislative
decades
activity
ago.
already occurred. So for the executive order to say, hey, we've already had this conversation. We have a law about this. This is the law. Enforce the law. There's no need for the legislator to debate that because they already have done so.
I'm separating out the technical legality that Donald Trump is operating inside the existing framework, and he's doing it correctly, from the fact that when we're talking about our legal framework and the funding of the legal framework, um, it still is supposed to originate in Congress. The you know the next Congress could literally undo everything that the current Congress has done. And then the Congress after that could literally undo that Congress did. And the system's actually set up that way on purpose so that you're never more than 2 years away from being able to vote for the financial strangulation of laws you don't approve of. So Drew's asking in the comments, so what do you need exactly Trump's executive order to say? As far as I understand it, Trump's executive order, it basically says, go enforce Title 230. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. And like Chris and I've kind of been debating, that is a technically legitimate function of an executive order.
It's the only legitimate function of an executive order.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's what the executive order is for.
Now, if what you're asking is, would I prefer that it said something different, please let us know in the comments. But as far as I understand it, that's what it really boils down to. Trump said, hey, guys, there's this law on the books. Enforce that law. Go look at these social media companies and make sure they're not operating outside of the framework of that law. And look, if YouTube, for example, I love YouTube. I've loved YouTube for a long time. I've loved YouTube long before I was a YouTuber, as it were.
Yeah, no shit. Do you know how much plumbing I've fixed in this house off of YouTube?
Oh, yeah. How many ancient... oh, yeah, no. How many shotguns that haven't been produced for 50 years I've been able...
I mean, I watched a YouTube video to figure out how to cut Cameron's head off for our Predator video.
Okay, Drew's saying...
I went to a film school to learn film production and special effects and cinematography and all that stuff. And I still go back to YouTube sometimes to ask other pros, hey, man, I want to do this thing, and, well, any ideas? Oh, yeah, there's about 50 different ways you could do it. And how much money do you want to spend, and how much time do you want to spend? You could do it cheap, and it takes a minute, or you could do it, here's the expensive right now, and hey, maybe there's something in the middle. Bwah! Get it!
Drew's asking, what does it say, though? It sounds like he's asking about specific text in the bill, and in the executive order. And I got to be honest, I have not yet read the executive order. It only just happened yesterday, and then last night, when I normally would have been reading, I was actually watching Polytech's show, and then, actually ended up calling in and chatting with them for a minute. Hey guys, we love you. But I've listened primarily to Styx Hexenhammer and Tim Pool on this. And according to them, what this boils down to is enforcing...
Okay, Cameron, stop.
Go ahead.
By the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered as follows. Free speech is the bedrock of American democracy. Our founding fathers protected this sacred right with the First Amendment to the Constitution. The freedom to express and debate ideas is the foundation for all our rights as a free people. In a country that has long cherished the freedom of expression, we cannot allow a limited number of online platforms to handpick the speech that Americans may access and convey on the internet. This practice is fundamentally un-American and anti-democratic. When large, powerful social media companies censor opinions with which they disagree, they exercise a dangerous power. They cease functioning as passive bulletin boards and ought to be viewed and treated as content creators. The growth of online platforms in recent years raises important questions about applying the ideals of the First Amendment to modern communications technology. Today, many Americans follow the news, stay in touch with friends and family, and share their views on current events through social media and other online platforms. As a result, these platforms function in many ways as a 21st century equivalent to the public square. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube wield immense, if not unprecedented, power to shape the interpretation of public events, to censor, delete, or disappear information, and to control what people see or do not see. As president, I have made clear my commitment to free and open debate on the internet. Such debate is just as important online as it is in our universities, our town halls, and our homes. It is essential to sustaining our democracy. 1 second. Online platforms are engaging in selective censorship that is harming our national discourse. Tens of thousands of Americans have reported, among other troubling behaviors, online platforms flagging content as inappropriate, even though it does not violate any stated terms of service, making unannounced and unexplained changes to company policies to have the effect of disfavoring certain viewpoints, and deleting content and entire accounts with no warning, no rationale, and no recourse. Twitter now selectively decides to place a warning label on certain tweets in a manner that clearly reflects political bias. As has been reported, Twitter seems never to have placed such a label on another politician's tweet. As recently as last week, Representative Adam Schiff was continuing to mislead his followers by peddling the long-disproved Russian collusion hoax, and Twitter did not flag those tweets. Unsurprisingly, its officer in charge of so-called site integrity has flaunted his political bias on his own tweets. Real quick, the Twitter thing, I think I already talked about this earlier, but just this is it. This is a big chunk of it, and this is what makes Trump so right on this particular one. Twitter didn't fact check Donald Trump. Trump stated an opinion, and then Twitter appended to that opinion a link to an article which claimed to debunk the opinion of the president, but was itself an editorializing article. It was another opinion. So the claim that Twitter made by fact-checking, they made a few claims. First, they're claiming that Donald Trump has made a factual claim. He made a prediction. He predicted that mail-in ballots will lead to voter fraud and voter suppression. That's a prediction. The only way for that to be fact-checked is to, in the future, show that there is a counterfactual. And let's be very clear. That's a prediction that voter fraud will occur in the future. That means that if one community activist offers to carry everybody's ballots, I think Tim Pool uses this example. If one community activist offers to carry everybody's ballots to the mailbox, and just he knows who's going to vote for Trump and who's going to vote for Biden, and he just throws away the Trump votes and puts the Biden votes in the mailbox, or vice versa, throws away the Biden votes and puts the Trump votes in the mailbox, voter fraud has occurred, even if it's not large scale. The fact is, if Donald Trump says voter fraud will occur, and then it does, he is correct. But more importantly, until it does or does not, he has stated an opinion, not a fact. And for you to say that you're fact-checking an opinion, and then to do so with an article that is just an opinion, that's not fact-checking. That's editorializing. And the opinion that they fact-checked him with was there is no evidence that voter fraud occurs.
Except for that
which
one
is
judge.
Hilarious when on the same day there were several cases that came out of really severe voter fraud. And we can get into that. This is a thing that we're going to be talking about for a while now. So I'm not going to go deep into the judge that cast 25% of the votes in a single district in complete flagrant disregard of the law to which he swore to uphold. But we will go into that when we get back into voter fraud later. At the same time, online platforms are invoking inconsistent, irrational, and groundless justifications to censor otherwise restrict Americans' speech here or at home. Excuse me. Several online platforms are profiting from and promoting the aggression and disinformation spread by foreign governments like China. One United States company, for example, created a search engine for the Chinese Communist Party that would have blacklisted searches for human rights, HID data unfavorable, that's not an acronym, hid data unfavorable to the Chinese Communist Party, and tracked users determined appropriate for surveillance. Now, what he's referring to there is Google's project. What was it? Do you remember?
Red Dragon, Snapdragon,
something like that. But yeah, and Google, yeah. So anyway, there's more here. He goes into more specifics about Section 230, which we've already discussed. And guess what happened right after the executive order ran through? Twitter starts fact-checking, labeling Trump's tweets, and he's not happy. Wait. You know what I did? I got my damn tabs out of order. Twitter fact-checks 2-month-old tweets by China as Trump threatens web giants with bias investigations. Tim Pool did a pretty good bit on this article. I'm not going to go into the article itself a lot. I want you to see that headline because it's this article is talking about what they're doing. I want to talk about what the consequences of this are. In the coming months, there are going to be lawsuits based on the executive order as it relates to the law. And when the arguments are made in court, this article is going to be part of the court's arguments. The plaintiff's arguments are going to come from this article and articles like it, and data searches and history searches of Twitter, and the argument is going to be made that because Twitter suddenly felt the need to fact-check China after the executive order passed, that is evidence that Twitter knew that the thing that they had done before when they were selectively censoring conservatives and especially conservative politicians and the president was wrong. Not just wrong, but criminally wrong. The fact that they're doing this, this is equivalent to if a white cop killed a black man in the street and everybody came out and said, "You're a racist because you killed a black man," and he drew his pistol and shot a white man to prove he wasn't a racist. That's what this is. This is Twitter murdering the white guy so that they can pretend like they're not racist murderers. They're just murderers.
Drew says, so basically what you're saying is the stuff people say on social media is protected by the First Amendment to the Constitution, which is free speech. Yes and no. What this is going to boil down to is companies like Twitter and Facebook and YouTube are going to have to choose a side. They're either going to be publishers, and they will have the liabilities and privileges that come with being publishers.
And they won't survive that.
Well, they may, as long as they're honest about their bias. That's really what it comes down to, is the fact that a lot of this bias is hidden. Where they're going to have to declare themselves platforms, and then they get they get a smaller number of privileges, but they also get certain immunities to liabilities. And that's going to be the thing that results from this. And I think it's pretty clear. And I think it's pretty clear that Twitter wants to be a publisher because, they came out real quick and started fact-checking a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
Didn't they?
Yeah, they did. Okay, we're running up on almost an hour on air again. That's Cameron, we're gonna have to be careful. That habit's gonna get dangerous to your professional your professional
Oh.
engagements. It's 8
Oh,
o'clock. But
yeah,
let me
real
say,
quick.
well, real quick, Drew, please criticize me. Please rebut, criticize. If you think I'm wrong, if you can point at it, I'll be happy to argue it and defend my positions on camera. Because let me be very clear, I'm brilliant, not perfect.
Yeah, and let me be clear. Please prove me wrong. Because if you can prove me wrong, you will teach me a thing I do not already know. And I am happy to go through that on air so that everybody else can benefit from the experience. Offenses are taken, not handed out. That's just
Damn
not
right.
how it works around here.
Yeah, if you can offend me, I'll buy you a beer and a steak. All right. Well, I think that's a good place to put a button on it. Because for one, I got shit to do today too. I
Yeah,
got to
I
get
do
us
got to
ready
go to
for.
work.
I got to get us ready to shoot some footage tomorrow. I'm I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. I've been working my ass off this week to get us ready for it, and it's going to be a good shoot. So that's all I've got. It's Firearms Friday. We had a good show today. We had a good show yesterday. Really appreciate you guys tuning in and hanging out. And
Like, share, subscribe, please.
yes, please definitely share and subscribe. And since it's Friday, here's your safety brief. Don't drive drunk, don't fry bacon naked, and, sex, drugs, rock and roll, videotape, and farm animals. No two at the same time. Be safe.
Yeah, wow.